everyone, I'm Hannah. This is Eli. I'm holding him so he stops making noise in the background. But today we're going to be talking about the 8 books that I read in January. I have 7 of them here with me, and the other one I borrowed from the library. So my reading in the month of January was pretty typical for me. I had a couple of soft goals. One of them was just to rebuild my reading habit. I loved watching all of the content about other people starting the 75 booked for the beginning of the year, but I just got back, not yesterday but the day before, from a couple weeks of traveling, which was so fun, and I'm going to be talking more about that in my next video. But I knew that the 75 booked wasn't really going to work for me because I had this hard deadline coming up. I didn't want to force myself to read for 75 minutes on a day that I was traveling for 11 hours. Throughout January, I was trying to challenge myself to read more, and I was aiming for about an hour and a half of reading every day, which is how this stack got to be the size that it is. And I ended up reading an average of an hour and 25 minutes a day. It was interesting to see how my reading fluctuated throughout the week. I would say I read more on weekends for sure. I could very easily hit 3 hours plus on Saturday, Sunday. And then Monday, Tuesday were usually really good, but then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I was really struggling to hit an hour consistently. That's kind of what I expected. I thought I'd be able to be a little bit more consistent with it, but that makes a lot of sense given that I have a 9 to 5 and I get more tired as the week goes on. Anywho, I also had the soft goal of reading more books that I own, and at the time of recording this, I have 91 unread books out of 148 books owned. Editing Hannah here. I just got my bangs trimmed, and mostly I'm keeping them out of a headband just so I could have this documented. I need this to remember this later on in my life. But what I meant to say was that I have 91 read books out of 140 something owned. I have read a vast majority of the books that I own, and that is the thing that I'm really proud about. Okay, I'll throw it back over to Hannah from the more distant past. I'm pretty proud of that number. I feel like I've been working really hard towards the goal of reading my physical books, and a lot of the books that I own that are unread, I've owned for a long time. So I'm really excited to get around to finally reading those. I think that's it for the preamble. My only other lead-in is that this month I mostly read nonfiction, and when I was going through the list of books that I read in 2025, I was surprised to see that throughout the entire year I most consistently read nonfiction. Also, if you cannot tell, I did just wake up and start recording this because I'm still terribly jet lagged and I keep waking up before 5 a.m. So we get a PJs and coffee chat for this video. The very first book that I finished reading in 2026 was Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimerer. I'd actually been reading this book for months and months and months. It took me a really long time to get through this book, but mostly because I wanted to just spend more time with it. I didn't want this to be a book that I sat down and just got through. I had a really good time just reading a chapter a day and really sitting with it and thinking about it. This book is about, if you haven't heard of it, this is about people's relationship with each other and people's relationship with the land, and parts of it are slightly autobiographical, which I really enjoy. I feel like I learned a lot from this book and gained a whole new appreciation and perspective in a way that I don't know if I would have gotten to without having read this. So I hope that makes sense. It was really, really good. This book is talked about a lot on the internet, so if you want to learn more about it, there's a bunch of creators here on YouTube and on other platforms who have waxed poetic about it, so I feel like I don't need to belabor the point, but I specifically really enjoy the Wild Geese podcast with Anna Corinne, so go check that out if you haven't seen it. And yeah, that was my first book that I read this year. I think I've been really struggling with the whole philosophy of the 5-star book rating system, and so I just haven't been rating the books as I've been reading them in Fable, because this is just kind of a classic, and so am I rating it on what I think of it? I know that that's how that's supposed to work, but I feel like it doesn't really matter what I think of this book. I think it was really well done, and I've definitely read nonfiction books in a similar vein that were not as well done, but like I feel like if they talk about important things, I don't want to rate it low because I still want people to read them, because I think you can still learn a lot from a book that you didn't enjoy, you know? I don't know. I think I'm going to talk more about this later on in the video, but this is probably a 5-star read for me, like pretty easily 5 stars. But so are a lot of books that I read this month, and I'm very stingy with my star ratings. So I just had a really good month, and I'm excited to talk more about it with you. Okay, the next category of books I want to get into is cozy, low stakes reads. I ended up reading 2 of them this month. One of them is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I have been seeing the internet going crazy about this book for a long time, and at my workplace there's one of those leave a book, take a book shelves, and I was having lunch with a friend. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a very bright blue spine, and I was like, no way, that's Remarkably Bright Creatures. So I literally paused her in the middle of our conversation, walked over to the bookshelf, and came back with this book, and then it sat on my shelves for 2 years. So I was really, really glad to finally have read this. This was one of those books that I just hyped up a little bit too much in my brain, so I ended up getting nervous to read it for some reason. I ended up liking it. I had gotten 80 pages into it before I tried picking it up a few months after I grabbed it, so maybe a year and a half ago, and it just wasn't pulling my attention in. It wasn't grabbing me, but I think I read it in a much better headspace this time around, and just in a headspace where I was ready for the cute cozy vibes of a more low stakes book. They definitely still talk about serious themes. One of the subplots of this book is trying to solve the disappearance of a teenage boy from many years ago. So there's definitely deeper themes, and there's a lot of really good kind of found family, kind of just community being there for each other that I really liked in this book. I think I like this more than any of the other cozy found family helping each other vibe books that I've read before. Specifically, I'm talking about, what am I talking about? I think I got rid of it, but a man called Friedrich Bachmann. I think if you like Friedrich Bachmann, you'll like this book, but there's just a little bit of unreality to his books that sits unwell with me. I think they're a little bit too idyllic, and I did not feel this way about Remarkably Bright Creatures. So I really liked it. Thinking back on it, I'd probably give this a very high 4-star rating. I don't know if it made quite the tier of 5 stars because I haven't really thought about it since I finished it, and I think that this is the second book that I read this year. But I think that this is a great book to recommend to people. I'm pretty sure I saw that they were making this into a movie, but I haven't seen too much movement on that front. So I don't know if they signed a movie deal and if they're working on it, or if they're just going to end up not making it. I hope that they make it because I think that my mom would love this book and also love the movie. So it's great for people who really like cozy good vibes, but with a healthy dose of, oh, this could actually happen kind of thing. Except for that this is 100% magical realism, and there is a sentient octopus in this book. So I don't know why it reads as more realistic to me, given that fact, but it does. The next cozy low stakes book that I read is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. A friend recommended this to me because I recommended to her the Becky Chambers book, A Long Way to a Small and Grey Planet. And she said she felt the same way while reading this as she felt while reading The Long Way to a Small and Grey Planet. There's a lot that I really liked about this book. I did not feel quite the same as I did while reading The Long Way to a Small and Grey Planet, but I think it's kind of because a lot of this book focused... So, if you haven't heard of The House in the Cerulean Sea, it's about a caseworker who deals with magical children, and basically there's like a whole lot of stigma around magical children, and they kind of just get shuttled off to different orphanages if they're like too magical or too unwieldy, and like society just doesn't want to deal with them, so they get put in these like foster homes that are posed as orphanages, but like it's kind of an open secret that these kids are never going to get adopted, kind of thing. So the main character's job is to go and make sure that the orphanages are like treating the children well, and that they're functioning in a way that they're supposed to, and basically that they aren't just like hoarding kids for the government check, kind of thing. He's really good at his job. He gets put on a special case with like especially magical children, and kind of the rest of the book just happens from there in this like orphanage for like extremely magical kids. It's like an obvious allegory for different types of like social phobia. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it like you can kind of take it in a number of ways, like racism, homophobia, classism, like that kind of thing. It's kind of like all muddled into this metaphor of like magical. It's like magical kids, like the kids who look obviously different from the non-magical folks are more heavily stigmatized than the kids who can like kind of pass as non-magical if they like just don't use their powers, kind of thing. And the kids in this orphanage are like very visibly magical creatures, and yeah, just deal with like a lot of unfair things because of that. But I thought that this book handled those themes super well. It's also a love story. I don't know if that's super explicit. It's kind of hinted at on the back of this book. I don't think it's that big of a spoiler. I think that this book is kind of touted as like a cozy, queer, not magical realism, not fantasy book, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed it. I think it was different from The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet because that is a very adult book to me. It's like cozy and young adult in a way that makes you really relate to the characters if you're kind of also in the like figuring it out stage of life. Mostly because I think The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet follows just like, I keep wanting to say like a younger cohort of people, but there are a lot of characters in that book that are like much later in their lives and like established in their careers. So I don't know why it gives me that vibe, but this book to me felt much more about like the children and like getting to know the kids in the orphanage and seeing how like the lead of the orphanage and like the folks who work there interact with this caseworker. And so it was a lot more about that than like the found family, like working together, figuring yourself out kind of thing, though there were elements of that. So all of that said, I thought it was super duper cute. There is a sequel to it that I think I'll pick up. I heard that the sequel was not as focused as this book was, and I also don't really know what it's going to be about, and I think I'm gonna let it rest. I think I will read it eventually, but this was really cute. This was just really cute. If you want a very cute, low stakes read. Okay, my next category of books that I finished this year is like YA middle grade. So last year I started reading the Percy Jackson and the Last Olympians series. I really wanted this to be a thing that I accomplished in 2025, but by the time like Christmas came around and like the winter holidays were happening, I had not even picked up the last book in the series, and I also didn't really want to. Sometimes when I read too much YA in a row, my brain gets saturated with it and it all reads as super duper cringy to me. And so I needed to give like a healthy amount of break time between the Percy Jackson books. But in January I picked up Percy Jackson and the Last Olympians, The Last Olympian by Riordan, and I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that I reread the series as an adult. I think it stands up super well. I think that the first 3 books I really, really enjoyed just for like the story of it. And then a love triangle starts happening in the 4th and 5th books. And I was getting a little tired of the love triangle. It just reminded me of being in the like Team Jacob, Team Edward era, the like Ron or Harry era, even though that was not as big of a thing as Team Edward, Team Jacob. And I think that there was a love triangle in Divergent, so it kind of felt like Rick Riordan had this pressure to like perform the love triangle thing, but it didn't really feel organic between the characters to me. And there's like, I kind of don't understand why one of the characters exists. And it's the non-magical human one who can like see through the mist. And I'm forgetting her name. She has 2 first names, I think. Like something Elizabeth Dare. Her name is Elizabeth Dare, which is not 2 first names, but it's just a cool name. I kind of don't understand why she exists, and I'm pretty sure she exists only for the love triangle and kind of as like a scapegoat for the plot when plot points get tricky. I feel like whenever she shows up, I never really understand it, and she just wasn't that strong of a character to me, and I think that the love triangle really watered down a lot of Annabeth's character. But if you can ignore that, I think that the rest of the series stands up really well. I thought that this was a pretty satisfying end to the series, but it did kind of feel like this like huge 5-book like climax that we're building up to fell a little flat. But I do like the way that it resolved, and I think later this year I might pick up the short stories that were also published as a part of the Last Olympian franchise, but weren't a part of the original 5 like set of books. So that's the Last Olympian. Oh, I keep forgetting to rate things. This was probably, I feel like I rated this super high on Fable, but honestly my gut reaction right now is like 3 stars, which feels unfair. I think I really like this, so maybe I'll give it a 4 because I'm feeling generous this morning. And then, I don't know, I feel like I need to rate the series as a whole, and I'm also feeling 3 stars this morning. This feels way more like myself than I was feeling like throwing out 5 stars like crazy. The next YA middle grade book that I read this year is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I finished reading this in January, but I read the first half of it in 2025. There's kind of 2 parts to Little Women, and I adored the first part. Like 100% 5 stars through and through, really liked it. There's a little bit of a time skip between the 2 parts, and I'm so pleased with the way that I read this book. I remember reading the first part and thinking, oh my god, I'm only going to be able to read this for the first time once in my life, so I want to take a little bit of a break just to like let this universe breathe for a little bit longer in my brain before I pick up the second part, because this isn't something that I just want to fly through, like I want to cherish it. And I'm really glad that I did that, mostly because I did not like the second part as much as I liked the first part. The second part, a lot of this book is very preachy. I will say that I thought a funny video for me to do. Let me know if you agree and I'll follow through with it. But so this Little Women, let me back up. Little Women is about the 4 March sisters growing up in, I think, like Concord, Massachusetts, which is so cool because I work there. I live here. So anyways, it's about the 4 March sisters kind of just like growing up and finding themselves, but there's like a real moral objective. I think I heard through the internet that this is like a moral objective of the publisher and not Louisa May Alcott, but there is like this underlying theme of like prescribing young women how to be and act and support men in time of war. There's a lot of like, be a docile, good little woman, Little Women, but be docile, be small, be complicit, like not complicit, but like compliant, like virtuous, Christian, all of those things. And if you can look past that, there's a lot of really good things that happens in Little Women that is just so cozy, cute, feel good, very good coming of age vibes, very good sister vibes. I really like this because I have 2 sisters and a brother, 3 siblings, but like I very much grew up in a girl household because my brother is the youngest, and it definitely just felt like you were reading like girl household, and just like you got to spend so much cool, cute, quality time with each of the sisters, and I feel like the character arcs of each of them individually, except for Jo, actually made sense. Jo and Beth. Let me just say Jo and Beth, but I don't know. I thought it was really cute. I'm just like totally enamored with the March sisters, and just like the world building was amazing, even though this is like not fiction. Like, it's fictional. It takes place like 2 towns over from me, 3 towns over from me. I don't know. I don't want to dox myself, but okay. All of that being said, Marmy March is like the vessel for propaganda, and I think that there's not a single dialogue in the first part of this book that is not like some moral lesson that she's bestowing on to her kids. Like, there's no normal dialogue that happens between the mom and her children that isn't like, well, daughters, we are in a time of war, and you must support the war by carrying your little burdens, accepting that we don't have very much money, and any excess that we do have will go towards supporting those brave soldiers, kind of thing. Like, that's literally everything that she says to like her 8-year-old kid, which is crazy. That's a crazy thing to say to an 8-year-old. Maybe not. Whenever this book takes place, I'm kind of bad with years and timelines, and I should know this because it's like an important part of American history, but it's like 18 something, 60. In the second half of the book, I liked because you get some Marmy Marsh that is not just like war propaganda, which was nice. Like, she had very normal moments with her children that were like mothering in a super regular way, and I think a lot of that was because of this time skip, that a lot of the moral lessons in the first half happen because like they are young children, so like they are still more like malleable in character than they would be as like older teenagers. Eli, can you chill? Come here. We're gonna speed this up. The funny video idea that I had is tier ranking every Marmy Marsh lecture. She's just like, if you like come at it with a comical attitude and you're like, oh, this is going to be like a lot of this book, but like it's kind of funny, then like it makes the book a lot more enjoyable, and also it just is kind of funny. But then I thought that I would be the only person in this world who would enjoy a tiered ranking list of moral lectures given by some, I don't know, some mom in like the early 1800s. So let me know if you'd be interested in that, but also you won't hurt my feelings if you aren't. So that was Little Women. I'm really glad that I waited to read the second half because I could see myself rereading the first half of this book like every year at the end of the year kind of thing, and especially if I ever have children of my own, or like if I become that like super cool eclectic aunt who like lives states away and just goes on like international vacations, and she's like constantly gone and very mysterious, but brings my nieces and nephews back the like coolest little trinkets from my adventures. If that happens, I don't know, then I could definitely see myself reading like the first couple of chapters to like my future nieces and nephews. Or, like, especially around the winter holidays. This book starts like right before Christmas time. So the first half left a really strong impression on me. The second half I think fell a little flat, but it was a very cute sequel to the first half. Okay, the last 3 books that I read in January kind of all deal with a really similar theme. So I had a big career crisis like, I don't know, a year and some change ago, and pivoted fields. And while I was having this career crisis, I kept asking myself, like, what would I have majored in if I didn't major in the thing that I did major in? And the answer that I kept coming back to was my undergrad had a Peace and Justice Studies department, so I would have taken a lot of Peace and Justice Studies classes. Probably would have like minored in it so that I could major in other. I have so many interests, but long story short, film, peace and justice studies would have been like the focus of my degree if I didn't like major in a STEM field. So anyways, I've been trying to do a little bit of like an independent study in peace and justice in like my spare time. I haven't been able to get too far with it just because life is busy, and it's kind of, I want to be able to do it justice. I want to be able to do peace and justice and like really do my due diligence in researching it. But also it's like, I think a part of me is still mourning the fact that I'm never going to be an undergrad again. And like, I'll probably do some grad school at some point whenever I figure out like really what path I want to be going down. But like, undergrad is such a cool prime environment to just like explore who you want to be and like the world you want to exist in. And so I'm researching this stuff in my adult life, but there's like no community to it, which I'm really sad about. So I've been taking it so slow because I think I'm still mourning the fact that I'm not going to be sitting in a class with people in like pretty similar situations to me. Like, I'm never going to be like living on a campus again, taking a class in person again with people who also care very deeply about these things. So it's just like me alone reading books in my room, but I get to chat with you all. And so it's making me feel a little bit better about it. But my first like real complete book that I finished reading about these ideas was The Search for Nonviolent Future by Michael Nagler. He was a professor at Berkeley in the classics department, I think. I think he has recently retired from teaching, which like good on him. But there's a lecture series that he did. I don't think it was a lecture. I think it was like a recorded class that is up on YouTube somewhere, but it's about, what was it called like Peace and Conflict, something. I really like that my alma mater named their department Peace and Justice and not Peace and Conflict, because I really like that it like decenters conflict in the conversation and takes a more like forward-looking approach to what does like justice look like to communities that we've done harm on to, kind of thing. So anyways, that was a quick aside, but I felt like this book was good. It wasn't like, this is what I mean. It's like, am I rating this on the writing, the content, or how I felt about it? Because the writing was okay. It was very academic in tone at times, and then like not like, he's not going to get a Nobel Prize in literature, but that's also not what he's going for, kind of thing. But it was like not distracting. It was just like, oh, this is written by a person who's been teaching classes for many years and not by a person who like writes novels, kind of thing. Not that you can't do both, but I'm not like, but then I think everyone should read this book. And so I don't want to give it a 5 stars because I'm like, there's nothing that I think that is wrong about this book. Like, there's like the writing style, there's a few like thematic things that I'm not like 100% on board with, but a lot of this book talks about things that I think are really important, and I think like, I'm totally on board with the idea that nonviolence is the future. That's it. Like, I think we're all just people trying really hard to be people, and we should recognize that first before anything else, kind of thing. And that's really what this book is getting at. So if those themes interest you, I recommend that you pick it up. It was just cool to see that explored in a few hundred pages. I've only watched a couple of videos in the like peace and conflict studies course recordings so far, but I'll probably work my way through the rest of them just in support of my goal of learning more about peace and justice. But this was a pretty good primer, all things considered. So I went more in depth on the content of this book so I could use it as a jumping off point to explain the last 2 books I read in the month of January. The first of them is 3 Guineas by Virginia Woolf. I'm just making sure that the art, I can't tell if the art is clothed, but 3 Guineas by Virginia Woolf. This is kind of Virginia Woolf breaking down exactly what's wrong with the military-industrial complex. And I did not know that. I thought, like, the back of this book, like, made me think that this was, like, 3 separate essays, like lectures that she gave at some university that they just like bound and published together. And I was just excited to hear Virginia Woolf talk for like 100 more pages kind of thing. I got this at a used bookstore in Manchester by the Sea. The bookstore is called Manchester by the Book, and they have the cutest bookshelf in the back of the store. It's a boat. It's a boat with books in it, and it's just in this very cute coastal Massachusetts town. So loved the vibes of that place. I spent like a few hours just walking around it, which was so much fun. It's also one of those places where you like walk further into it, and then there's like, it just keeps going. There's like a never-ending amount of rooms and books, and it was really cool. So at the time, I was thinking more about authors that I wanted to read more from, and I just happened to pick this up. And then I immediately left it outside in the rain after I bought it because there's like a little bit of mildew stains on it, and I didn't want to like infect the rest of my bookshelf. So I also don't like love the smell of some used books. I know that's a hot take, but I wanted to leave it outside to air, and then it rained, and I was really sad. So now it's a little bit crumpled up because it rained on it. Anyways, let's talk about peace and justice. So this is Virginia Woolf's take on the military-industrial complex, and it's like kind of neat to hear that people have been thinking about these things for a really long time, but also like a little disheartening. Like, I think she really hit the nail on the head with a lot of the points that she made, and basically her whole thesis was like, let's follow the money. Let's follow the money, which translates to power, and let's like think really critically about who has the most capital, who is like not able to gain more capital, and what are those people going to do to perpetuate war, basically, was the question that she was answering. So I'm so thrilled to have read this. I really enjoyed it. One of my life goals I decided recently is to read through the Virginia Woolf canon of works. Really, really glad to have read this, and it happened to just coincide perfectly with the themes presented in The Search for a Nonviolent Future. So it was really satisfying that I read these books like within a week of one another. And then the last book that I read in January completely pulled the rug out from under me. It was the most devastating thing that I read in a really long time. It is Home Fire by Kamila Shamsie, and I don't own a copy because I borrowed it from the library. I loved Home Fire. One of my life goals is to read through the Women's Prize. But because I am stingy with my 5 stars, a lot of my 5-star reads have either been shortlisted or have won that prize before. So I'm like, what if this is just a huge collection of future 5-star reads? I feel like that is not super far off from what could be the truth. And so blindly, I just like spun a wheel. I got a random number for a random year of a book that has won the Women's Prize previously. And I picked up Home Fire. I did not read a single thing about what this book was about. I read the entire book. It was devastated. Like, literally devastated, curled up in a ball, stared at the wall level of devastated. Turns out Home Fire is a modern retelling of Antigone, which is a Greek tragedy, I'm pretty sure. Just knowing that made me feel way better after I finished reading the book. Like, I was telling my office mate about how sad I was about the book that I had finished reading the night before, Home Fire. And she just like typed in Home Fire in the Google search bar, and she was like, that does seem really sad. It's based on this well-known Greek tragedy. And I was like, that made me feel so much better, but also, why didn't I look that up before I read the book? So before you read it, know what you're getting yourself into. Don't be like me. But if you want to be like me, it was kind of really cool to have read it with that experience, because after I finished reading it, I was like, oh my god, this is exactly how people felt the first time they read Antigone. Like, this is crazy. I I read this whole book, and I'm sure that this is how people experienced this tragedy. So if I ever end up feeling like I need to read the like really classic stories at some point when I read Antigone, it's going to be a little disappointing because I know exactly how it ends. And I did not have that experience with Homefire. It was not disappointing. It was truly heart-wrenching. Okay, the reason why I coupled it with these two books, however, is because there's a really beautiful display of nonviolence that happens in that book, and it also deals with themes of war and loss and systemic violence. So that's all I'll say about it. Look up what it's about, so you don't make yourself very sad like I was. Like, truly, I think having read Homefire is what totally kneecapped my progress in reading for 90 minutes a day every day in January. I was doing really well with it. I think I only missed one day and read for like an hour and 21 minutes. And then I read Homefire. I think on the day I finished it, I only had like 20 minutes left of it. I finished those 20 minutes, and then for the next like 3 consecutive days, I only read for like 20 minutes because I was just like still reeling from that experience. So it was really good. I would personally rate it 5 stars, but I caution you if you are going to embark on it yourself. Okay, this video ended up being way longer than I thought it was going to be. Those are the 8 books that I read in January. Next week, I'm going to be talking with you about the books that I bought and read and brought with me and brought home from my travels in Europe through both Ireland and Paris, France. So stay tuned. Please like, comment, subscribe, especially if you're interested in that video, and I will see you in the next one.